I love that reading because it feels so true to me about every one of our congregations. Not every detail, but in my career, I've done a lot of interim and contract ministry, so a lot of relatively short-term ministries. So I've served quite a few churches now. I've served the church that gathered to talk about a wrathful God, the first parish in Malden, Massachusetts, which was founded in 1648. They've come a long way from that, don't get me wrong. It's very much a Unitarian Universalist congregation now, but still there in Malden, Massachusetts. And I've served churches younger even than this one, if you can believe that, though this is a pretty young church by our standards. In Napa, California, for instance, I served them right next to the fields of grapes. And so I think that reading, but certainly this sermon, can be boiled down to just this, that we have a rich history. It has helped shape who we are today as Unitarian Universalists, and it can either propel us into the future or weigh us down. That is, we want a church that reveres the past but trusts the dawning future more, to reference the hymn we sang earlier. And this is true not only of our congregation, but of each of us as individuals. We come from parents and relatives and ancestors who no doubt led interesting and challenging lives, whether we know the details or not. Each of us was born in a place and a time that shaped who we are. We grew up experiencing life and the world in that time and place. And now we are here in this present moment, having come from all of the many places we've come, with all the experiences we've had, to this time and place. We could, of course, fill many books with the details of each of our stories, the particular wheres and whens and hows and whys of our own personal history. So even in the relatively short time since this congregation was founded, it has seen so much, like in that reading. Joy and sorrow, great accomplishments and big failures. Ministers and lay people and staff and visitors and renters and people who just wandered through too. And of course, a million other events that could be named, births and deaths and marriages and coffee houses and concerts and worships and meetings and so many more. Now, since I have a total of 7 weeks of history with the Unitarian Universalist Society of Mill Creek, I am not going to presume to tell you a lot about its particular history, but I do know a few things. For instance, that we, like several of the churches in this area, owe a lot to the First Church in Wilmington, which has been a mother church for many in this area, and to Frank McArthur, who pushed to found this church, was one of many to do that, and who bought the land we're sitting on now. And I'll briefly quote from the history on our website that many of you know, I'm sure, but could hear one more time. The Unitarian Universalist Society of Mill Creek traces its roots to the First Unitarian Society of Wilmington. As membership swelled after World War II, fellowships were spun off in Newark, in Westchester. In 1988, a proposal of a third congregation to serve the Hockessin, did I say that right? I'm still working on that one. Hockessin. I knew it was wrong. Pike Creek area marked the birth of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Mill Creek. When UUSMC was chartered in February 1989, Sunday services were led by guest ministers and lay members. The Sunday Services Committee developed then still functions actively to coordinate the various aspects of services and to plan special lay-led and holiday services. UUSMC met in a series of rented spaces, from the music room at Tatnall School to the Chinese American Community Center, before building a permanent home here on Polly Drummond Hill Road. Thus ends that quoting. So even as little as I thus far know about this history, I do know that it is a rich and powerful legacy to build upon, and also not something that a congregation can afford to let it hold back. Things will continue to change, I can guarantee you. Things have already changed many times. And so the continual mission is to maintain our core values while allowing for growth and transformation. And that's difficult but vital work, always. It's part of why, as part of all of my ministries, but certainly the ministry I hope to do here, I want us together to engage that history and also the history of the place where we reside, the larger community. As I've said already before here, and as you know quite well, this land was once the home of Native American peoples. This land right here was shaped and cultivated by enslaved peoples of African descent. This land has passed through many hands over the years into our care, and it's important to know and honor that history. Now, fortunately, we are people who have also always believed in growth, in learning new things, in learning old things, in learning new ways of being. We can do this, and the good news is that we're not alone. We come from a tradition that UUSMC is but a small part of. There are more than 1,000 Unitarian Universalist congregations that are part of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Now, that's not huge compared to some denominations, but think about that. It's 1,000 congregations. That's a lot. More than any of us could probably hope to visit in a lifetime. There are hundreds more that are not part of the Unitarian Universalist Association, but are part of their own organizations in Canada, in the British Isles, in other parts of Europe, in Central and South America, in Africa, in Asia, in Oceania. All told, there are hundreds of thousands of UUs and Unitarians around the world, connected through the bonds of relationship and covenant. So we didn't start yesterday. We didn't even start in 1961 when the American Unitarian Association and the Universalist Church of America consolidated to form the Unitarian Universalist Association. And of course, even those groups, which were started some 250 years ago, had roots extending back to England and to other places in Europe, and back to the earliest roots of Christianity some 2,000 years ago. And of course, from there, back through the story of the Jewish people, and from there back to other peoples in the Middle East. It's a long and often complicated and sometimes challenging heritage from which we come to be here today. But we do know this. We come from people who are used to change. We come from people who have been called heretics for our unorthodox beliefs. Unitarian Universalists, and before that Unitarians and Universalists, have been at the forefront of some of the best movements for change, for abolition of slavery, for the creation of social welfare programs. We have been political leaders. There are 4 United States presidents who have been Unitarians, and a 5th, Thomas Jefferson, who was at least a big fan of Unitarianism, if not a Unitarian himself. We have heritage of the proponents of social justice throughout decades and centuries, of leaders in the civil rights movement, in the marriage equality movement, in so many other important causes. Which is not to say that we've been perfect. For all those Unitarians and Universalists who pushed to abolish slavery, there were those who supported it absolutely. Notably, John Calhoun, the Vice President of the United States, not only an ardent supporter of slavery, but one of the founders of All Souls Unitarian in D.C. Unitarians were also leaders in the eugenics movement, I'm sad to say. And I say this just to make sure that we don't get too cocky, that we know our history, and surely our future too, will be far from perfect, and to remind us to be cautious and careful about the stances we take today. Be bold, but be aware that you might be wrong, and that you might have to learn and try to correct mistakes you've made and will make. But so it always is in life. There are things in each of our lives we're proud of and moments we would like to forget. We're human and complex and beautiful and messy. And so are our congregations, and so are our communities, and so is our world. So today, remember this. We have rich histories as individuals, as a congregation, as a faith tradition. There are things in all of these to be proud of, and moments we wish had gone differently and want to learn from. We have so much to celebrate, so much to learn from, And as the world around us continues to change, we'll have our own adaptation to do. But we've also done it before. As I will spend the rest of my ministerial career pointing out, 3 years ago, none of us expected we would become experts at virtual church, which isn't to say we are yet experts at virtual church, but here we are. And so as we are together in person again, but also doing virtual ministry, we'll have to keep learning new things over and over again. We'll have to keep being the people who revere the past and trust the dawning future more. How exciting it is to think about where we might go next.